In 1994, the Santa Claus made us believe in Christmas magic again. It became a cherished part of our childhoods, but more than 30 years later, many of its stars took far darker, unexpected paths. From quiet disappearances to shocking tragedies and secret deaths, what happened after the magic faded will leave you stunned. Let's find out where they are now. Tim Allen as Scott Calvin. Tim Allen was born on June 13, 1953, in Denver, Colorado, United States. At 41 years old, he played Scott Calvin, the ordinary man who accidentally becomes Santa Claus in The Santa Claus. His performance turned a fantastical premise into a believable family story. That role quietly became the emotional backbone of Disney's modern Christmas era. Long before fame, loss arrived early. When Allen was just 11 years old, his father, Gerald M. Dick, was killed in a car accident caused by a drunk driver, shattering the stability of his childhood. After his mother remarried and moved the family to Michigan, Allen struggled socially and emotionally, carrying unresolved anger into adolescence. Those buried emotions later resurfaced in his stand-up comedy and helped fuel his rise through Home Improvement and films like Galaxy Quest. But pain did not immediately turn into success. It first turned into self-destruction. In 1978, Allen was arrested for trafficking over 650 grams of cocaine and narrowly avoided life imprisonment, serving 2 years and 4 months in federal prison instead. That experience followed him long after his release, even as his career exploded with Toy Story and the Santa Claus franchise. The man selling warmth and humor on screen was haunted by how close he came to losing everything. As fame grew, stability at home weakened. Allen married Laura Dybel in 1984, and they welcomed a daughter, Catherine, but years of career pressure and emotional distance ended the marriage in divorce in 2003. In 1998, he was arrested for DUI and later acknowledged a long-running struggle with alcohol abuse, entering rehabilitation as part of his sentence. These battles unfolded quietly, hidden behind a wholesome public image. Today, Tim Allen is 73 years old, still active in television, film, and voice acting, with an estimated net worth of $100 million built through decades of consistent work. He is married to Jane Hodgduck, living a steadier life shaped by hard lessons rather than reinvention. In the end, Scott Calvin wasn't just a role. It became a reflection of a man learning how to rebuild after collapse. Eric Lloyd as Charlie Calvin. Eric Lloyd was born on May 19, 1986, in Glendale, California, United States. At just 8 years old, he played Charlie Calvin, the child who believes in Santa when no one else does in The Santa Claus. His sincerity anchored the film's emotional core and made the fantasy feel real. Without Charlie, the story would have lacked its emotional compass. That authenticity came from a childhood spent almost entirely in front of cameras. Lloyd began acting at just 18 months old, growing up on film sets rather than playgrounds. Working continuously from toddlerhood carried a quieter kind of pressure. Roles in The Wonder Years and later Dunstan Checks shaped his discipline long before adulthood. As he aged, the industry's attention slowly shifted away. Lloyd continued acting through projects such as Batman and Robin and appeared in films like Deconstructing Harry, but adulthood brought fewer leading opportunities. He returned to the Santa Claus sequels, yet the spotlight that once followed him as a child gradually dimmed. The transition was subtle but permanent. Instead of fighting to stay visible, Lloyd quietly redirected his path. He stepped away from acting and focused on understanding production and post-production, choosing long-term stability over short-lived recognition. That decision marked a turning point, redefining success away from fame. Now, Eric Lloyd is 40 years old, married to Lisa Marie Tasker, and runs Lloyd Production Studios in Glendale, working in film and music production. His estimated net worth of $500,000 reflects a career rebuilt behind the scenes rather than in front of the camera. David Krumholtz as Bernard. David Krumholtz was born on May 15, 1978, in New York City, United States. At 16 years old, he played Bernard, the sharp-tongued head elf who quietly runs the North Pole in the Santa Claus. His dry humor and authority gave the film its edge, balancing fantasy with realism. That discipline was shaped early. Krumholtz grew up in a working-class Jewish family in Queens, with a father who worked as a postal employee and a mother who was a dental assistant. Money was tight, and the pressure of growing up nearly poor left a lasting mark. Acting began as a way out when he landed a Broadway role in Conversations with My Father at just 13, soon followed by early films like Life with Mikey and Addams Family Values. Momentum carried him forward, but not without struggle. As a teenager and young adult, Krumholtz worked steadily in films such as 10 Things I Hate About You and later television, yet it took years before stability arrived. That stability finally came with Numb Thurs, where he carried 6 seasons as Charlie Eppes, proving he was more than a side character. Decades later, his dramatic turn in Oppenheimer confirmed the longevity of that slow, earned rise. Behind the scenes, his personal life settled into quieter ground. In 2010, Krumholtz married actress Vanessa Britting, and together they built a family with 2 children, Pema May and Jonas. While his career expanded across film, television, and Broadway, home life became his anchor. Health, however, interrupted everything. In 2011, Krumholtz was diagnosed with thyroid cancer and underwent surgery followed by radioactive iodine treatment, forcing a sudden pause in his life. He was declared cancer-free in 2012, but years later faced further physical decline tied to cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, leading to hospitalizations and major weight loss before quitting marijuana entirely. Today, at 48 years old, David Krumholtz continues acting across film and stage with an estimated net worth of $8 million, a survivor whose resilience now defines Bernard as much as brilliance once did. Wendy Crewson as Laura Miller. Wendy Crewson was born on May 9, 1956, in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. At 38 years old, she played Laura Miller, the grounded, skeptical mother navigating a world suddenly ruled by Santa Claus in the Santa Claus. Her performance anchored the film emotionally, giving credibility to the chaos around her. That emotional steadiness was built long before Hollywood. Raised in Hamilton by June Doreen and Robert Binney Crewson, Wendy pursued classical training, studying at Queen's University and later in London. Early work in Canadian television refined her craft, and her breakthrough in The Doctor proved she could carry serious drama. By the time The Santa Claus arrived, she was already a seasoned actress. Success widened her reach, but not her comfort. Roles in films like Air Force One and television series such as 24 brought international visibility, while Canadian projects earned her multiple Gemini Awards. Still, Crewson often moved between industries, never fully belonging to one, always adapting. Her personal life mirrored that quiet complexity. She married actor Michael Murphy in 1988, and together they raised 2 children, Jack and Maggie, before divorcing in 2009. Years later, in 2014, Crewson publicly came out as lesbian, a decision she described as emotionally difficult, particularly within family dynamics shaped by earlier expectations. Now, Wendy Crewson is 70 years old, continues acting in television and film, and lives in Toronto, choosing projects with intention rather than visibility. Her estimated net worth of $5 million reflects a career built on consistency, not spectacle. Judge Reinhold as Neil Miller. Judge Reinhold was born on May 21, 1957, in Wilmington, Delaware, United States. At 37 years old, he played Neil Miller, the skeptical psychiatrist and comic foil to Santa's magic in the Santa Claus. His sharp, dismissive delivery added grounded humor, giving the story tension between logic and belief. That rigid rationality echoed his early life. Raised in a family that moved frequently due to his father's legal career, Reinhold learned to adapt quickly while maintaining emotional distance. Nicknamed Judge as a child for his stern expression, he carried that persona into adulthood. Acting studies at Mary Washington College and the North Carolina School of the Arts gradually turned discipline into craft, leading to early visibility in films like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Success arrived quickly and unevenly. Reinhold gained mainstream fame through Beverly Hills Cop as Billy Rosewood, followed by hits like Ruthless People, but leading roles in the late 1980s failed to sustain momentum. As opportunities narrowed, he returned to supporting roles, later earning critical respect with an Emmy-nominated turn on Seinfeld. By the time he joined the Santa Claus, his career had already learned the cost of early overexposure. His personal life followed a similar arc. Reinhold's first marriage to Carrie Fraser in the mid-1980s was brief and strained, ending quickly under professional pressure. Stability came later when he married Amy Miller in 2000, and together they raised a daughter, building a quieter life away from Hollywood. Health and controversy briefly disrupted that balance. In 2016, Reinhold was arrested for disorderly conduct at an airport shortly after being released from the hospital following an adverse reaction to medication. The case was later dismissed. By 2026, at 69 years old, he remains active in film and television, including returning to Beverly Hills Cop, with an estimated net worth of $2.5 million, a career defined less by peaks than by endurance. Peter Boyle as Mr. Whittle. Peter Boyle was born on October 18, 1935, in Norristown, Pennsylvania, United States. At 59 years old, he played Mr. Whittle, Scott Calvin's demanding corporate boss in The Santa Claus. Though brief, the role grounded the opening act in everyday pressure, setting the emotional contrast that made the transformation into Santa feel earned. Boyle's presence made the ordinary world feel heavy and real. That weight reflected his early life. Raised Catholic in Philadelphia, Boyle initially pursued a religious path, joining a teaching order before leaving due to intense mental strain. His youth was marked by searching rather than certainty, followed by a nervous breakdown during military service. Acting became both escape and expression, leading to early acclaim in films like Joe and the unforgettable Young Frankenstein. Rather than chasing stardom, Boyle chose complexity. He built a reputation as one of Hollywood's great character actors, moving between dark drama and comedy in Taxi Driver the Candidate, and later Everybody Loves Raymond. Television brought him renewed fame and 7 Emmy nominations, while a guest role on The X-Files finally earned him an Emmy win. Even when the roles were small, his impact was never minor. Off-screen, Boyle found lasting stability. He married Lorraine Alterman in 1977, and their marriage endured nearly 3 decades until his death. Together they raised 2 daughters, and his personal life remained notably steady in contrast to the volatility of his early years. Illness eventually brought everything to a close. Boyle battled multiple myeloma and heart disease, passing away on December 12, 2006, in New York City, at the age of 71. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was $8 million, and he was laid to rest in Springs, New York. Long after his final role, Peter Boyle remains remembered not for leading man glamour, but for depth, humanity, and endurance. Larry Brandenburg as Detective Nunzio. Larry Brandenburg was born on May 3, 1948, in Wabasha, Minnesota, United States. At 46 years old, he played Detective Nunzio, the observant police officer quietly piecing together the truth in the Santa Claus. Nunzio served a crucial narrative role. He embodied the real-world consequences, closing in on a man losing his grip on reality. Without him, the film's fantasy would have felt weightless. That grounded realism mirrored Brandenburg's own beginnings. Raised in rural Minnesota, his childhood was shaped by distance from Hollywood glamour. Acting was disciplined pursuit, built through theater and supporting work rather than instant recognition. This background trained him to disappear into roles, never dominating a scene, but always making it believable. That skill placed Brandenburg inside some of the most critically revered films of the 1990s. In The Shawshank Redemption, 1994, he appeared in a prison world defined by silence and restraint. In Fargo, 1996, he contributed to a bleak Midwestern realism that would redefine American crime cinema. Roles in The Untouchables and later Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas further proved his ability to strengthen tone without demanding attention. He became the kind of actor directors trusted when authenticity mattered. By 2026, Larry Brandenburg is 78 years old, with an estimated net worth of $1 million, accumulated through decades of consistent, unglamorous work. Detective Nunzio may have been a minor character, but Brandenburg's legacy lies in how often he stood inside great films, holding them together without ever stepping into the spotlight. Mary Gross as Miss Daniels. Mary Gross was born on March 25, 1953, in Chicago, Illinois, United States. At 41 years old, she played Miss Daniels, the soft-spoken school figure observing a child caught between belief and disbelief in the Santa Claus. Her role was small, but essential. She represented the adult world that neither fully dismisses nor fully embraces magic. Miss Daniels subtly protected the emotional innocence of the story. That sensitivity was shaped early. Gross grew up in a stable, middle-class Chicago family as the youngest of 3 children, with her older brother Michael Gross already navigating an acting career. Encouraged by education and discipline rather than adversity, she developed her voice through study, humor, and observation. Performance became an intellectual craft, not a desperate need. Her major breakthrough came when she joined Saturday Night Live from 1981 to 1985, during a turbulent rebuilding era for the show. Gross became known for sharp character work and political impressions, most notably Nancy Reagan, at a time when SNL itself was fighting for survival. Film roles followed in Baby Boom and later Practical Magic, while extensive television and voice work kept her career adaptable rather than fixed. Privately, Gross resisted Hollywood conventions. She never married and kept long-term relationships largely out of the public narrative, including an early relationship with photographer Jay King. That independence allowed her to move fluidly between comedy, drama, and voice acting without being boxed into a single identity. By 2026, Mary Gross is 73 years old, still active through voice roles and selective screen appearances, with an estimated net worth of $3 million. Miss Daniels was never meant to be remembered loudly, but Gross's career proves that subtlety, restraint, and intelligence can endure long after louder performances fade. Judith Scott as Susan Perry. Judith Scott was born on December 22, 1965, in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, United States. At 29 years old, she played Susan Perry, the composed professional woman orbiting a man unraveling into Santa Claus in The Santa Claus. Her character represented the rational adult world pushing back against belief. Without Susan, Scott Calvin's transformation would have felt far less disruptive and far less real. That sense of emotional distance was rooted in Scott's own childhood. Born into a military family, she spent her earliest years constantly relocating, from North Carolina to Georgia, Kentucky, and even Germany. Before she turned 6, her parents divorced, fracturing any sense of permanence. Repeated moves through Tennessee, Delaware, and Illinois forced her to adapt quickly, learning to observe rather than belong. That survival skill eventually led her to performance. After brief academic detours and a failed year in Paris, Scott stumbled into Chicago's second city, a moment she later described as life-changing. There, comedy became her informal graduate school, teaching her timing, resilience, and how to transform instability into control. That foundation carried her into television roles on CSI, Dexter, 24, and films like Guess Who and Fracture. Yet Scott's career followed a quieter arc than stardom promised. Often cast as intelligent professionals, doctors, analysts, authority figures, she became a familiar presence. Still, her consistency kept her working across decades in an industry that rarely forgives pauses. By 2026, Judith Scott is 61 years old, with an estimated net worth of $2 million earned through steady film, television, and theater work. Susan Perry may have stood on the edge of a Christmas miracle, but Scott's real story is about endurance, adaptation, and surviving a life that never stayed still long enough to feel safe. Paige Tamada as Judy. Paige Tamada was born on January 11, 1985, in Los Angeles, California, United States. At just 9 years old, she played Judy, the warm-hearted elf who believed in Santa before anyone else in the Santa Claus. Her performance became one of the film's emotional anchors, embodying pure belief without irony. Unlike many child actors, Tamada's early life appeared stable. Raised in Los Angeles, she entered acting at age 6 and moved easily between sitcoms like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and guest roles on Seinfeld and Home Improvement. She learned professionalism early, long before she could fully understand its cost. Fame arrived quietly, and so did expectations. After the Santa Claus, opportunities followed. She appeared in Mad City and television dramas, yet by the late 1990s, Tamada made a decision that stunned industry observers. At just 14 years old, she walked away from acting entirely. No scandal, just a clean exit from a system many never escape. Tamada chose education and anonymity over auditions and typecasting. While her peers chased relevance, she rebuilt herself outside Hollywood, eventually pursuing a career in corporate human resources. The girl who once symbolized belief chose control over applause. By 2026, Paige Tamada is 41 years old, living a private professional life with an estimated net worth of $1.3 million. Judy believed in Santa forever, but Paige Tamada proved that sometimes the most shocking choice a child star can make is to leave the spotlight willingly. Jane Eastwood, as Judy the waitress. Jane Eastwood was born on December 17, 1946, in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. At 48 years old, she played Judy the waitress, the sharp-tongued, blink-and-you-miss-her witness to Scott Calvin's unraveling in the Santa Claus. Her scene was brief, but it anchored the film in everyday skepticism. Judy represented the ordinary world brushing up against something it could not explain. That observational edge came from a grounded childhood. Eastwood grew up in Toronto's Hogs Hollow, spending summers in Muskoka and winters skiing in Collingwood. She had distance from fame and a strong sense of Canadian realism. Before acting, she trained as a painter, learning patience, detail, and restraint long before stepping on stage. Her career unfolded slowly, then relentlessly. Eastwood became one of the original members of Second City Toronto and a semi-regular on SCTV, carving out a reputation as a master of character comedy. Film roles followed across decades, from Chicago to Hairspray, and later as Mrs. White in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, proving her ability to steal moments without stealing focus. She worked constantly, even when recognition lagged behind effort. Off-screen, life hit harder. Eastwood married writer David Flaherty, brother of Joe Flaherty, and together they raised 3 children. His death in 2017 marked a profound rupture, forcing her to navigate grief while continuing to work. Loss did not stop her career, but it changed its weight. By 2026, Jane Eastwood is 80 years old, with an estimated net worth of $2 million, earned through more than 5 decades of film, television, and voice work. Her 2019 ACTRA Award of Excellence finally acknowledged what audiences had long known. Judy the waitress was small, but Jane Eastwood's legacy never was. Joyce Guy as Principal Compton. Joyce Guy was born on August 18, 1954, in the United States. At 40 years old, she played Principal Compton, the authority figure enforcing order while chaos quietly brews in the Santa Claus. Her role embodied institutional disbelief. In a story about magic, she represented systems that refused to bend. That presence reflected a career shaped by professionalism rather than celebrity. She entered the industry through television, where reliability mattered more than star power. Acting for her was not spectacle, it was structure. That structure carried her through long-running series and prestige projects. Guy appeared in General Hospital, one of television's most demanding environments, before later roles in films like Moneyball. She often played figures of authority, principals, administrators, professionals, faces audiences trusted even when characters resisted change. Unlike many performers, Guy never built her career around publicity. She worked steadily, sometimes invisibly, and later expanded into directing. Her career moved parallel to Hollywood fame, not toward it. By 2026, Joyce Guy is 72 years old, with an estimated net worth of $1 million, accumulated through decades of consistent screen work. Principal Compton may have dismissed the impossible, but Joyce Guy's career proves that endurance, not belief, is often what truly lasts. Steve Vinovich, as Dr. Novos. Steve Vinovich was born on January 22, 1945, in Peoria, Illinois, United States. At 49 years old, he played Dr. Novos, the clinical psychiatrist tasked with labeling Santa Claus as delusional in the Santa Claus. His character carried enormous symbolic weight. He was the voice of science attempting to erase belief. In one calm diagnosis, Dr. Novos nearly dismantled the entire miracle. That chilling authority was shaped by a conventional upbringing. Vinovich grew up in Peoria in a working-class household. His father sold insurance, his mother worked as a secretary. That normalcy quietly trained him to embody professionals who sound reasonable even when they are profoundly wrong. His career followed that exact pattern. Vinovich became known for playing credible figures inside larger stories, appearing in films like Mannequin and later The Intern. He also built a parallel life on stage, performing in major Broadway productions such as Lost in Yonkers, All the Way, and Waitress. On screen or on stage, he was rarely the center, but always the stabilizer. That stability extended off camera. Vinovich married actress Carolyn Mignini in 1982, and together they raised 2 children. While Hollywood careers often fracture under pressure, his remained steady. Work continued, not explosively, but consistently, mirroring the dependable roles he portrayed. By 2026, Steve Vinovich is 81 years old, with an estimated net worth of $1 million, earned through decades of theater, film, and voice acting. Dr. Novos tried to diagnose away magic, but Vinovich's career proves that quiet authority, used well or poorly, can shape entire stories without ever raising its voice. Nearly 3 decades later, the magic of the Santa Claus hasn't disappeared. It's simply taken different shapes. Some of its stars found peace far from the spotlight, others kept working quietly, and a few were forever changed by the roles that made us believe. So when you look at them now in 2026, do you still recognize the people behind the Christmas magic? If this journey moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And tell us in the comments which transformation surprised you the most.